So far, 36 games into the regular season, the Pittsburgh Penguins have been a very up and down team. Nothing's been very consistently, besides Crosby being an absolute legend and Guentzel still showing that he's not just a product of Crosby. So far, through the games that they've played, the Pittsburgh Penguins are 18-14-4 and have $200,000 in cap space. Because they have so little cap space, they can't easily pull anybody up from the AHL and have to constantly put someone on LTIR or just IR to be able to make the cap situation work whenever they need to make a recall. So far through the season, it has been well documented how bad the Pittsburgh Penguins power play has struggled. Even though they have a ton of Hall of Fame talent, it is just not clicking very well, and the fact that Todd Reirden still has a job is very surprising. Their penalty kill, though, on the other hand, has been very good and has been sitting at the top of the league for a while now. The Pittsburgh Penguins' even strength numbers actually look very good. It's just that their power play percentage is really dragging them down, and that's something that cost them a lot of games early on. Crosby currently leads the team with 21 goals, and if the power play was going more, he would honestly probably have a lot more and would be challenging Austin Matthews for the most in the league. So far, Guentzel has the most points with 42 so far, proving that he's not just a product of Crosby and he can generate his own offense because he has more points than Crosby this season. Even though Sidney Crosby and Jake Guentzel have been firing on all cylinders for the entire season so far, that can't be true about the entire roster. Evgeni Malkin started the year off blazing hot, but then fell off massively for a large part of the year, and more recently he has come back and is putting up good numbers. But outside of that though, it's kind of been a struggle to get some depth scoring. More recently, they have been getting that, but overall for the entire year, it's been a big storyline that the bottom six can't produce a lot of offense. They may be better than last year's bottom six, because the last year's bottom six couldn't do anything defensively or offensively, but this year they're pretty solid defensively, but they can't produce any offense, and that's something that's hurting
At the start of the year, when the top two
lines
lines
can't get it
Malkin
going, looked like they had insane chemistry. And then as Malkin's play fell off, so did Riley Smith, and I think he's going to have a much harder time coming back than Malkin did. Evgeni Malkin's a much more skilled player than Riley Smith ever has been, even though they're both still very skilled. But I do think that if Riley Smith digs deep, he can really rekindle what him and Malkin had at the start of the season, and they can be world beaters again. Two other main people that I really want to point out are Erik Karlsson and Kris Letang. Erik Karlsson has been pretty good offensively, but he's not posting the numbers that you would expect from a guy who just put up over 100 points last season as a defenseman. Realistically, consistently putting up over 100 points as a defenseman isn't sustainable, but you would think that he would be producing at a more offensively gifted rate. He is doing very good for a defenseman, don't get me wrong, but when we see Erik Karlsson plays of the past, that's not something that he's doing consistently right now in Pittsburgh. A lot of his plays feel forced, and that's something that a lot of fans have been calling on and are saying that he needs to improve upon, because right now he doesn't have it, and that's something that needs to change if this team wants to have playoff aspirations. But on the flip side of that, with Erik Karlsson coming in and lowering his offensive burden, Kris Letang has been having an amazing season so far. He's been really physical and really defensive, and that's something that we haven't seen from Letang for a majority of his career. But right now, he looks absolutely insane, and this is some of the best hockey he's ever played in his career, which is even more insane. What do you think about what he went through last season with a stroke and the loss of his father all in one season? I'm really glad to see Kris Letang doing good again, because he's someone that really does deserve it. Bryan Rust and Rickard Rakell have been the other two top six wingers that I haven't talked about yet. Rickard Rakell started off the year with Evgeni Malkin, and it did not go very well. But the issue with that is that the first line was so good that they couldn't break up Rust, Crosby, and Guentzel. But now that Rust got hurt and Rakell got a spot at the first line, he's actually producing very well so far, and his numbers will continue to improve, I'm sure. But Bryan Rust is now back, and he's going to slide in next to Evgeni Malkin, and I think that he's going to be able to rekindle some of the past Magic seasons that they've had together. The third and fourth lines have been a pretty big dumpster fire though, offensively at least. Defensively, they're pretty solid, but I don't think that they're very good, and they're not really an NHL caliber line. If you look at the third line of Lars Eller, Drew O'Connor, and then the third spot's kind of shifted a little bit depending on injuries or what they just felt like doing with the lineup changes. But currently it's sitting as Valtteri Puustinen as the other winger. Lars Eller has been a very good acquisition for the Penguins, and he's been a lot better than people were expecting when Dubas initially signed him in July. After a very slow start, a lot of fans were ready to give up on Noel Acciari, but he stuck it through, and then right before he got hurt, he was playing some of the best hockey we'd seen of him in Pittsburgh. And since he's come back, he's continued that streak up, and he's been a very big addition again to the penalty kill, and he's even chipped in a little bit offensively, which has been very nice to see. Out of all the moves that Dubas made at this year's free agency signings, none of them have been as bad as Ryan Graves. Ryan Graves started the year off as Kris Letang's partner, and it was something that was hurting Letang, and you could see it physically. So then they decided to switch him down to Erik Karlsson's pairing, and then you could see Erik Karlsson's offensive numbers really fell off and his overall play declined even more. And then recently, the last game, they demoted him to the third pair and put POJ up with Erik Karlsson. Now, it's unproven how he's going to be on a third pairing role, but so far, he's not done really anything great in Pittsburgh. And when you're making $27 million on your contract, you can't be playing at the level that he is right now. And I really do think that if his level of play consists, that he's going to see his way out of Pittsburgh before the end of the season. The Penguins gave him a long contract and a lot of money because they had to outbid other teams, and I truly think that there is a market out there for him. The dude's 6'5", and if he can put it together a little bit, he can be a very good defensive person in the NHL. But so far, we haven't seen that in Pittsburgh, and I think that's something that needs to be changed going forward, because so far, he shouldn't be on this Penguins lineup because he is really hurting the team right now. A lot of people gave Dubas flack for re-signing Tristan Jarry to a big contract, but so far that contract seemed great for the Penguins. Tristan Jarry is having a great season so far, and I don't think that's something that's going to change. He has had consistency issues in seasons past, but when they also brought in Alex Nedeljkovic this offseason, hopefully they see that they can lighten Tristan Jarry's load, and that'll hopefully be able to keep him at a higher player level. Alex Nedeljkovic has looked great in the games that he's played so far, and he doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. And honestly, if Jarry does start slipping a little bit, I feel confident in Ned to take over the pipes as the starter in net for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But now, let's get into what you want to see from this video and see what I think the Pittsburgh Penguins should do at the trade deadline this year. But if you made it this far into the video, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and leave a like on the video because it really helps me out and helps get the video out to more people. Much like a lot of other people that have been talking about this issue right now, I'm going to say that if the Pittsburgh Penguins are out by more than 5 points of a playoff spot by the time the trade deadline comes around, that they need to trade Jake Guentzel. He's the biggest player of value on the team right now, and that he's on an expiring contract, and that makes him very valuable. The Penguins don't have a lot of picks this year especially, because they traded their first round pick in the Erik Karlsson deal, and they could easily get a first back for Guentzel. He's elite. If they are out of a playoff spot, I do think that they will chip away at some of the other players though. Alex Nedeljkovic is also on a one-year deal. Even though he has been very good for Pittsburgh, that's something that can give him a lot of trade value on the open market, and I think that's something that a team like the Edmonton Oilers could look at and think that they might need in net as a savior. But if the Penguins are playing at a consistent level where they're still in the hunt for the playoffs, I do think that trading Jake Guentzel is off the board. It'll be something that really frustrates Sidney Crosby because you can tell they love playing with each other, and Crosby just loves him as a human in general. On top of that, I do think that they will go out and acquire bottom six talent because that's something that the team is greatly missing right now. Ryan Graves can be traded off, and his salary being shedded will give them a big open cap space market so they can go out and acquire someone else. We've seen from his time in Toronto that Dubas isn't afraid to go out and be creative when making trades and having other teams retain so he can get the player that he wants. We've seen it in the Nick Foligno trade and the Ryan O'Reilly trade to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Something else that's kind of underrated and a lot of people haven't been talking about too much is that if Riley Smith can't bring it back up, I do think that Dubas could potentially see about swapping him out for another winger to slot in next to Malkin. Like I said, they did have great chemistry at the start of the season, but both of them really fell off together, and so far it's not looking too great for him in Pittsburgh. He has another year left on his deal, and that's something that could be traded off pretty easily, and they could easily go out and get another player to come in and play with Malkin. But so far, it's too close to tell whether the Pittsburgh Penguins should be buyers or sellers. At the way they're currently playing at the time of this video, they should definitely be buyers because they're playing at a good enough rate. It's just little things that are hurting them really bad right now, and they just need to fix them to get themselves over the edge. And if they do, they can easily be in the playoffs. But at the same time, if they regress back to where they were at some points of this season and they start falling in the standings again, you have to get what you can for this roster. After this season, as of right now, they're getting just under $20 million in cap space for them to spend next season. So even if this season gets shot and they don't end up making the playoffs, they could easily trade off the assets that they have and then have even more assets to go out and acquire more players in the offseason or just sign players in the offseason. And I think that's something that Dubas will look to do either way with the amount of cap space that they have. Let me know what you thought about this video in the comments below. And let me know if you want to see this become a series for all 32 NHL teams, because I can easily do it. And as I said earlier, if you liked what you saw from this video and you want to see more from me, go and hit that subscribe button. I make shorts every single day detailing everything you need to know about what's going on in the hockey world. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.